Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Literature Class. Today, we will talk about Greek tragedy. My name is Percy and our outline for today is imitation versus representation or mimesis. According to Aristotle, we will talk about tragedy, the tragic hero, the plot, and of course, a snippet of Oedipus Rex. So as we begin, it is first important for us to talk about what mimesis is. Mimesis in Greek is equivalent to our term imitation. Now, the kind of imitation that we're talking about is not a literal copy, a literal imitation, but rather a representation. So when Aristotle talked about mimesis as an idea, it talks about representation. So we're not talking about literal copying, which actually gives the object a lesser value, but we're talking about representation. So that means it represents something. So in relation to the arts or literature, we know that literature is a mimesis of reality. It is a mimesis or representation of reality. Think about, for example, your favorite movies. When you're watching your favorite movie, you probably would be able to identify with a character. Maybe the protagonist went through something and it touches your heart and you started crying and feeling empathic towards the character. The question there is, why are you affected? You are not the character. But because we know that that form of art is actually a representation of reality, and probably it reminds us of a certain portion of our reality. If not, it touches our hearts in terms of what we want to do or what we don't want to happen in our situation and in the situation of our loved ones, then we know that the power of art is actually that of representation. It is a mimesis of your reality. It is a mimesis of humans' reality. There are two important emotions that Aristotle highlighted in the Greek tragedy, and that is pity and fear. We are pitiful towards the tragic hero, towards the character, because of the kind of fate he experienced or she experienced in relation to Oedipus Rex or Oedipus the king. We know that it's a tragedy because Oedipus actually went through so many challenges in terms of his journey in Thebes. He married his own mother. He actually have to fulfill the fate that was imposed by the gods. Okay, and all of these things are actually very tragic. So in relation to us as readers and viewers, probably if you have watched a version of that on film, then we know that we pity Oedipus, we pity the tragic hero, we pity the character. And at the same time, we fear. We fear that it can also happen to us. We fear that pride or hubris is also a reality that we can experience. And we are fearful that consequences, just like what Oedipus experienced, may not be literal in our terms, but it can happen to us. We can probably experience consequences from our actions, from our own tragic flaws. And that's the reason why pity and fear was highlighted by Aristotle. We're going to talk about that deeper in a bit. But going back to mimesis, we can talk about reality in terms of the experiences that we have. And then here's the artist, the writer, the literary figure or producer, and the art that was produced by the artist. That art is actually a representation of what's in the mind of the writer, and what's in the mind of the writer is a representation of reality. So we value the art, we value the play, the drama, the tragedy, we value any form of art for that matter, because it's not just a copy. It is not just a production or a reproduction rather, but it is a representation of our reality. That is mimesis. Art is a representation of reality. The Greek tragedy is the representation of what could happen, what could have been, what should not happen, in terms of the misfortunes of the tragic hero. Now, going back to Aristotle, speaking of tragedy, stressed the point that it was an imitation of an action. And again, the word imitation there is not just a literal copy, but a representation. Okay? It's a mimesis of an action. Tragedy is a mimesis of our reality. That of a man or a human being falling from a higher to a lower state. Look at what happened to Oedipus. He was actually king of Thebes. But because of the misfortunes or the fate, F-A-T-E, the fate that was, let's say, directed to him by the gods, or he was predestined, okay, to follow the fate that was marked out for him. And because of that tragic flaw, it was actually something that us as human beings can also fear that it can happen. Us falling from a higher state to a lower state, all because of pride. We know that hubris or pride was the main agent in Greek tragedy that made Oedipus fall or fell from where he used to be to where he ended up. That is hubris. That's why there's that popular verse or scripture that says, pride goes before destruction. Because we know that pride is the main cause of so many downfalls. Pride is the main cause of so many consequences that humanity is experiencing. And we can learn from Oedipus in terms of that. Moving forward. Now let's first define what tragedy is. Let me read it for everybody. Tragedy is an imitation, a mimesis of an action that is serious, complete, of a certain magnitude, in the language embellished with each kind of artistic ornaments, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play, in the form of action, not of narrative, through the pity and fear, affecting the proper purgation or catharsis of these, and similar emotions. This is according to Poetics, page 10. This can be summed up into 6 important elements. We have the plot, number 1. Number 2, the character. Number 3, the thought. Number 4, diction. Number 5, song. And lastly, spectacles. Let's not confuse plot with the story. The story is not the plot. In literature, we know that plot and story are 2 different things. When you say story, it is the events that unfolds, the character's journey. But when we say plot, we are talking about the sequence and arrangement of the parts of the events. Okay? So let me read this for you. Plot is the arrangement of events, just like what we said, or incidents on the stage in terms of drama or in terms of fiction on, the narrative. The plot is composed of clearly defined problems for characters to solve. So it might be arranged in, let's say, flashback or flash forward or in medias res. When you say in medias res, that means it started in the middle of the action. And then the series of events are unfolded maybe backwards or forward, and then when you see it as a circular plot, then you go back to where it started. Okay, so that's in medias res. The playwright or the writer of the play or the drama must create a plot that is both credible and astonishing. By the way, we keep on using drama and plot. How do we differentiate the two? The drama is the literary piece, the literary text, and the play is the performance version of the drama. So typically it's the same, but technically it's different. So there is this figure of Aristotle's tragic plot structure that I want to post right now on the screen. So you're seeing it right now. So it starts with the beginning, there's the middle and the end. And in between all of these are actually different events, such as the inciting incident. We have the unfolding chain of events. We have the plot reversal or the change of fortune or recognition. There is that pity and fear part where you identify with the tragic hero. And of course, you feared that it would also happen in your reality. The action towards plot denouement, we have the catharsis, or the purgation, or the purge of pity and fear. So this Aristotle's tragic plot structure is somehow similar to what we know as the Freytag Pyramid. The Freytag Pyramid is the popular Gustav Freytag plot structure where there is beginning, rising action, climax, falling action, and ending or resolution. But it is technically still different, and we will unfold the difference between Aristotle's plot structure and Freytag Pyramid structure in a different episode. But today we're going to focus on the Greek tragedy. Other than plot structure, of course, the second element is the character. These are the agents of the plot, or the doers. Needless to explain, characters provide the motivations or reasons for the events of the plot. Of course, the plot is not going to run without characters in it. It's just a description of events. But the characters are the ones, being the agent of the action. These vivid characters face and overcome obstacles that we can recognize, according to Aristotle. They provide the vehicle for conflict. And conflict in the plot is actually the main struggle of the character. This is a revelation of the problems that will be unfolded. Aristotle defines a tragic hero as a person who must evoke a sense of pity and fear, we keep on emphasizing that, in the audience. He is considered a man of misfortune that comes to him through error of judgment. A tragic hero's downfall evokes feelings of pity and fear among the audience. So it has the power to make your audience feel fear and pity while they're watching the play. That is the role of a tragic hero. The performance, the dramatic performance in a tragedy has the power to let readers or viewers identify with him or her, with the tragic hero. The tragic hero is neither a paragon of virtue and justice, nor undergoes the change of misfortune through any real badness or wickedness, but because of some mistake. Okay, so let's try to take a look at these two important terminologies. Okay, number one, a great man, or of course, I don't want to sound sexist, but according to Aristotle's tragedy, it says a great man or a great person, a great human. One of those who stand with great repute and prosperity, just like Oedipus. The hero is neither a villain nor a model of perfection, but is basically good and decent. So that's the typical mimesis. It actually mimics or represents a human person. Probably not a villain, not a contravida, but someone who's just a good and decent character, but undergoes all of these tragic flaws, all of these tragic events because of hubris or the human pride. And of course, next one is mistake or flaw. In Greek tragedy, we call it hamartia. Hamartia, or the flaw, the tragic flaw or the mistake. This Greek word, which Aristotle uses only once in the Poetics, talks about a great man's faults not entirely because of some weaknesses of character, some moral blindness or error. We should note that the gods also are in some sense responsible for the hero's fall. So it's like a person trying to, commit these mistakes, this hamartia or flaw, because of pride. But also partly because the gods destined them or him to actually commit mistakes. That's hamartia. And that is a big agent of change in terms of the journey of the tragic hero. The third element is the thought. Now, it is considered the theme of the story, the reason the playwright wrote the play. The examination of patterns of life can be didactic or just a slice of life. When we say didactic, it means it's like sermonizing. It gives you a lesson. It actually gives you a sense of morals or teaching that should be followed for the betterment of your life. So that's very didactic. But that's the purpose of the theme in Aristotle's tragedy. It is the reason why the playwright wrote the play. It's because he wants to communicate a certain lesson in life. Number 4, language or diction. Vivid characters, facing and overcoming recognizable obstacles, need to express themselves in heightened language. Dramatic dialogue consists of two parts, narrative and dramatic. It means that in a tragedy or in a Greek play or in play in general, the language that is used is that of a very sophisticated language, a very dramatic language. This language is not in any way ordinary. So they do not employ the use of day-to-day language. Rather, they use heightened language. They use overly expressed language to communicate a certain level of beauty in the dialogue. An example of that is, of course, from Oedipus. It says here, whose tale more sad than thine, whose lot more dire. O Oedipus, this crowned head, thy cradle was thy marriage bed. That's very poetic. This is in the use of a heightened language. That's one of the elements of drama. It uses a very beautiful expression. It uses language that is beyond the ordinary day-to-day language. By the way, we know that this term Oedipus complex came from the story of Oedipus. Oedipus complex, or that emotional attachment to your mother, was actually in reference to Oedipus, because in the story you know that he did not know that he's marrying his own mother and that is one of the most tragic parts of the story. Okay, now the fifth element of tragedy is the song or rhythm. The heart of the play, the plot, character, language, and spectacle all have their individual rhythms in time. The combination of all these rhythms create the impelling force of the play, leading to a final climax and denouement. Now, when we say denouement, this actually talks about the events that takes place after the hero's downfall. After the hero embracing the misfortune or the consequence of his misfortune or his actions. From that point on until the ending, or in other terms, the resolution, that is what we call the denouement. The result of the actions of the hero down to the ending of the story or the play is what we call the denouement. Right. Now, going back to songs, just like what we said, the Greek play or the Greek tragedy actually has these elements of musicality, elements of heightened language through poetry and songs. One feature of the Greek tragedy is what we call the Greek chorus or the chorus. These are the alter ego of the story. These are singers, or it's like a speech choir. Okay, these are singers or reciters of poetry that actually talks about the alter ego of the character or the events that is happening that is not part of the dialogue of the characters. So it's like a narrator, but the use of songs and poetry are being employed in their dialogues. So the chorus in classical Greek drama was a group of actors who described and commented upon the main action of a play with song, dance, and recitation. Think about, let's say, the Disney animation Hercules. So in the movie Hercules, there's this character, her name is Meg, and she tries to sing I Won't Say I'm in Love, referring to her feelings for Hercules. And while singing that song, there's these characters at the back and, trying to dance and sing while reciting or saying what is in the heart of Meg. If you have time, please watch Hercules. You will see a modern day interpretation of the Greek chorus. So it's like that. Greek chorus or alter egos or choir that talks about or giving comments about what's happening in the story. Last one is spectacle. Spectacle. Everything that is seen or heard on stage. Actors, sets, costumes, lights, and sounds. Note that all plays have spectacle. Some emphasize spectacle more than others. When you watch a drama or any dramatic performance, whether be it comedy or drama or tragedy, what have you, musical, let's say, there is that sense of spectacle. That's why staging of a play is called spectacular. It means it's kind of magical. There is that effect in the combination of the acting and the costumes and the dramatization, the language being used or the music playing, there's the effects of the lights. All of this combined contributes to the spectacle of the drama. As we look back at the story of Oedipus Rex, we know that these elements are seen present in the play. So I hope that we will not see Oedipus Rex the same as that of an ordinary reading of a text, but we will see it with all of these elements coming to life and remembering that the story of Oedipus is a story of pity and fear in our lives. It's a pity that it happened to the character, and it also is something fearful that it can also happen to us. That is the effect of Oedipus Rex. That is the effect of Greek tragedy. I hope you learned something today as we talk about Aristotle and Greek tragedy and Mimesis and partly about Oedipus Rex. I'll see you on the next episode of our literature class. See ya!